5 stories of female infidelity. Women told about cheating on their husbands and explained why they took such a step. We begin. Listen carefully. First confession. Maternity leave. Restrictions due to the pandemic. My husband working remotely. All of this made my life dull and monotonous. The news of meeting my high school friends excited me. You're packing like you have a lover waiting around the corner, my husband joked that day. He couldn't imagine that the mother of an 11-month-old son would go off the rails after some classmate reunion. I was once in love with the boy who sat at the desk behind me. I remember doing new hairstyles every day to get him to like me. One day I heard a voice behind me, "That's the prettiest one, do that." The high school crush didn't develop into anything, but even in high school I often thought about this guy. I never talked to him after graduation, although there were plenty of opportunities. At least half the class came to a reunion of classmates. We sat far apart, but for a moment our eyes met, and a shiver ran through my body. From that moment on, I was sure that there would be some kind of sequel. And so it was. The only option for meetings was hotels with hourly rates. The first time I was embarrassed to go in there, but I really wanted to. He has a family, 2 kids. I have a husband and a young son who had to be left with a relative when I needed to leave home. I was twisting in lies like a snake on hot coals. For a woman who is on maternity leave, this is an extremely difficult task. The affair lasted several months. During that time I lost more than 10 pounds and madly liked myself in the mirror. My husband complimented me, said that motherhood was good for me. Strange how he did not notice the obvious. I must have been so brazenly cheating on him that he couldn't imagine that his wife was capable of such a thing. My lover suggested that we finish our meetings, which I did not expect, and at first I was even offended. His wife was more shrewd than my husband and suspected treason. I had to put a period. Yes, after a while he called and offered to meet again, but at this point I cooled down. Do I regret it? In a way, yes, because infidelity is despicable, and I admit it. On the other hand, I console myself with the fact that without this episode, it is unlikely that I would have lost the extra weight so quickly. And I looked at my husband with different eyes.
Second confession. I cheated on my husband during a business trip. Or rather, I was going on a business trip to finally do it. There were 3 candidates. One of them was so deaf that he did not understand my intentions, although they were unambiguous. The second was not sympathetic and was seen by me as a last resort. The third was, frankly speaking, a rival I had beaten off. Yes, the young man was paying attention to another girl, and she was just fluttering her eyelashes. So I mentally said to her, "Girl, move over, it's time for real women." For a master class cannot thank. It all turned out very easy. It was enough to massage his collar zone for a minute right in the cab. The main thing was how to do it and how to make eye contact, not staring, but playing. He never went near that girl again. I know that I was judged behind my eyes by those with whom I went on business trips. I know that they whispered, because it was obvious. I decided to cheat because of revenge against my husband, who had once been caught in an act of infidelity. I don't regret it and I don't intend to. It was great.
Third confession. I had a student marriage. We got married 6 months after we met, and literally a month and a half after the wedding I got pregnant. After that everything went according to the classics. My husband worked, I stayed home with the baby. It was very hard for me, both physically and mentally, because I had just graduated from college and didn't even have time to work. Most of my girlfriends were into class projects and didn't understand my motherhood at all. There were no grandparents around, and I didn't have time to make any friends in the city where I had moved to live. My husband started going on business trips often, going to work on weekends. I was severely burned out. We started to argue all the time. It got even worse. My husband started coming home drunk. I was terribly angry and felt worthless. One day, when my husband came home in the morning, I decided to get revenge on him. We met a guy on Messenger and immediately got to intimate conversations. We made plans for the day X. I had made prior arrangements with the nanny. At that time I was already working part-time and spent almost a month's income on the nanny. I went to my new acquaintance's house, and we had sex that same night. It was very mediocre, I didn't get any pleasure or experience. On top of that, he was not a very nice person. He knew my difficult situation, but he didn't even offer to drive me back home or to spend any time together after sex. I would go back alone to my baby and cry. If I was getting revenge on anyone, it was on myself. My husband never found out about my encounter and never will, because we soon divorced. All I did was add to my emotional problems. I regretted this act for a long time, and I could only forgive myself 5 years later.
Fourth confession. I was 33 years old and had been married for about 7 years. At some point I realized that in my relationship with my husband we had become more like each other than husband and wife. Sex became routine at first, and then it disappeared altogether. For a month, 2, 3.6 months. I did not understand why we had no intimacy for so long, so I decided to talk to my husband. Did you want passion after all these years of marriage? It doesn't work like that. Ask your friends, I am sure they're no better, my husband told me off. But I didn't give up. Despite the fact that we have 2 children, I tried to arrange a romantic evening, dinner by candlelight, going to concerts. I even tried to drag him to a country hotel to rekindle my passion. My husband saw all my efforts and somehow casually mentioned it. If you really want to, I do not mind. But there is a condition, I must never find out about it. One day my friend invited us to a party, but my husband, as usual, refused. He blew me off rather harshly. You're the one who wants to have fun, so go, I'll stay with the kids. At the party I met an interesting man who I liked superficially. We got to talking, and I realized that I was interested in him. He turned out to be married, and for me to communicate with a married taboo. But so well we were together that night. We both realized that in our families had long faded passion. After the party we kissed, and then began a storm of correspondence. It was a very intelligent and creative person, you could say that I had orgasms from the messages alone. A little later there were real orgasms too, we started to meet him secretly. Our connection lasted about 5 to 6 months. During this time I felt desirable, confident, bright again. I started exercising, I lost weight, I was filled with inner energy. I also began to feel much better in my family life. But still I decided to part with his lover for several reasons. First, that the original passion was no longer there. Second, I was constantly tormented by guilt both toward my husband and toward my lover's wife. I felt I had no right to screw over another woman like that. By chance I saw her photo on social networks of mutual friends, she was very nice. This was the last straw. My lover accepted my decision, we have never seen each other since.
The fifth confession. I have cheated several times in my life. All of these infidelities occurred during a permanent, serious relationship in about the 2nd or 3rd year of its continuation. When I dated someone for a long time, at the end there was always the feeling that this person was depriving me of other opportunities and that he was with me just out of habit, not because he loved me. I didn't think about the fact that there was any other way to solve this problem. I found new guys in different places. Once I met a pharmacist in a pharmacy. Dating at parties. Friends of friends. There were a couple of stories with coworkers. I'll tell you more about one of them. At the time I was in my 3rd year of a relationship, living with my boyfriend and working at an advertising agency. One day a new copywriter came to us. I hooked up with him. Our intimate relationship started in a meeting room. Started staying late at work. I didn't bring him home, because my boyfriend was freelancing at the time. Sometimes we would meet at my lover's house, but he lived with his parents and it wasn't very convenient. Then I wanted to end the relationship and pretend it never happened. But my lover started blackmailing me with personal correspondence. I couldn't leave, so I just waited for it all to sort itself out. My boyfriend, by the way, was very jealous and already suspected me of cheating. I was terrified of the outcome, I was paranoid. One day my lover and I were riding in the subway with our arms around each other and accidentally met my boyfriend. That was enough. That night I had to move in with a friend. I started dating my lover, he became my boyfriend. He is not a completely normal person, and a relationship with him was a serious challenge for me. I cheated on him too. More than once. I got a job somewhere else and once at a corporate party I met the guy the first was cheating with. I went to visit him. And once, when the guy wasn't home, I brought a new lover to my place and even introduced him to my roommates in the morning. And then I pretended it never happened. And my boyfriend didn't know. Another time I cheated on him when we had a fight. My boyfriend said that he couldn't spend the evening with me, and I went to visit an acquaintance I had seen only once before. I have a very low self-esteem, and for some reason I wanted to improve it by having relationships, affairs and sex with just anyone. It was not enough for me to have a good stable relationship, and I quickly stopped believing in its value. After these escapades, I felt good for a short time, as if I had gotten an A. Relationships on the side are very exhausting, and once I got mine, I was anxious to end them. In fact, I didn't really need these people. I was just closing my inner deficit at their expense.
The sixth confession. By the time I was 30, I was, as they say, a divorcee with a trailer. There were no suitable men around, and I didn't want to be alone. One day I bumped into an unfamiliar drunken man in the entryway of my house. He started paying me compliments and making jokes. It turned out that he was a guest of one of my upstairs neighbors. They were celebrating his birthday that day. We exchanged phone numbers. After that meeting, my new acquaintance started showing up at my neighbor's house more often to see me. One night he did not stay overnight at his friend's place, but at my apartment. It's hard to explain it all, but after only 2 months he moved in with me and called me his wife, bought my daughter presents. We created a semblance of family, we took pictures together, we invited people close to us to visit us. A friend of my common-law husband lived 2 floors above us, so on weekends he would come over for a beer or we would go to his place. The guy got too close to our family and it didn't end well. I regretted for a long time that I had not met my own roommate sooner than I did his friend, who became my husband. Several times I had sex with my husband's best friend while he was practically in the apartment next door. The first time it happened was when I went to pick up the phone that my roommate had forgotten. My best friend didn't reveal the truth for a long time, but then he cracked. My husband moved back in with his mom, and I was hoping to continue my relationship with my roommate. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. And he said a couple of times, "I wish we had met in a different way." As far as I know, friends keep in touch.